Hey, what's up, everybody? Just want to start this video off by saying thank you to Jeff, Thomasine, Galen, you guys who are prepared and ready to go every week. God bless you for being so faithful in your leadership. And then also for those of you who are opening up your home. I know Sharon opens up her home many Wednesdays, and I think Jared and Jeannie do also. And I'm remiss if I don't hit everybody, but thank you. It takes everybody coming together to make missional community work, and we've got a long ways to go as far as growth. But I'm grateful as far as growing ourselves as missional. I guess I could say a family of servant missionaries. We've got a lot of room to grow in that, but at the same time, we're on the right track. We're on the right path, and I believe God's going to continually use us in some pretty significant ways. I want to start tonight by just simply this is Monday. I'm reflecting on Sunday, and I felt the presence of the Lord pretty strongly when we started talking about the Antichrist's influence in the world today, the spirit of the Antichrist influence in the world today. And I felt a very strong just sense of warning that it was necessary to give during the sermon Sunday. And I don't want to miss that. I don't know who that's for. I don't know who that was necessarily, if it was for the church as a whole, for us specifically in our local context right here at our own church, or if there were just some people in the room that needed to hear that that the deception of the enemy is causing us to maybe not take sin as seriously as we should be. So just really quickly, let me just review, and then we're going to talk about in our groups tonight just what it looks like to live in light of the fact that the Antichrist is going to set up reign at some point, or is in some ways setting up reign now through his spirit, and what our response to that should be. But to look at this text a little bit more closely, there was an abomination of desolation that Jesus was talking about. That is a now, an already, and not yet illustration of. Again, we kind of think he was talking about AD 70. Most scholars believe that, but it also has an echo of a time to come where the Antichrist will actually reign, and there will be actually great tribulation on the earth. And so we talked about authority and power and leadership, and we have to be on guard for leadership that is corrupt, or a leadership that is exploiting the vulnerable, I think is a great way to say it. I'm reminded of, I remember Dave Ramsey saying something one time about particular companies who will set up shop, financial companies that will set up shop in poor communities, and they will charge just egregious percentages of interest on like furniture, or they'll have payday loan places where they charge over amounts of interest, and it's taxation or interest charges against the poor, and he rebukes those companies. But I'm thinking of stuff like that. It's this idea of authority that comes in and exploits, or feels like it needs to get rid of a particular people group. And so we got to watch out for leadership that exerts authority and doesn't have a sacrificial or a servant's heart. I think is important. He goes then on to say about how great that tribulation, that leader, how bad that tribulation is going to be during that time. And I used some pretty hyperbolic stories. I did it intentionally, and to think about the Christians in Iran. And I tell you, Sunday, you could have heard a pin drop after sharing that story. And I shared it very intentionally. For one, I had that same response while I was watching the documentary. Number one. Number two, I want us to realize that the enemy is not playing games, man. He's wicked. he desires to exterminate Christianity and the gospel of Jesus in our hearts. And man, he's serious about it. And so, I just, what would it look like for us to reflect on some of the places where there's such hostility to the gospel, and yet these men and women are still faithfully refusing to deny Christ and living for who he is. And I pray that's encouraging for us, and it spawns us to greater work. And then lastly, and I don't know, I was feeling a pressure or press for time, but I hope I did okay in that. Listen, man, in light of all of those things, I mean, if we'll just live in obedience to the words of Jesus, we're going to be okay. And that's where the gospel comes in. All of us have fallen short of living according to the words that Jesus or the acts that Jesus has called us to live. And I break them down simply as this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And the second one's like to it: love your neighbor as yourself. So I don't want to get into a bunch of complex Christian ethics. I just want to say loving God and loving others. That's if we'll be obedient to his word in reflection of those two things. And I don't know, it goes into a lot of different categories, but it's broken down in those ways. And so what would it look like for us to live in such a way that Christ is first and we're loving him in the everyday rhythms of our life? And what does it look like for us to love our neighbor just as ourselves in the everyday rhythms of life and be obedient to the words of Jesus? And if we'll do that, then we've got a hope and a promise that God's going to see us through. I'm meant to leave Sunday with this. I'll leave this with you now and let you get started in your conversations. But in this life, we will have trouble, and you've heard that said much. But don't leave off the second part of that verse. But take heart, for I have overcome the world. Left to ourselves, left to our own ways, man, we're in trouble. But take heart, because Christ has overcome the world. And the overcomer of the world sat down at the right hand of his Father and sent the Spirit of God, the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead, now dwells in our mortal bodies, now dwells in our hearts. And that same power, that same strength, that same guidance, that same Spirit now rests in the body of Christ. And so take heart, because Christ dwells within us, and it makes all things possible. So love you, and I'll see you Sunday, where we're going to pick up again right where we left off and talk about the second coming of Jesus. And so love you, and I'll see you very soon.